Hi, welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Ian Varley, CEO of Eagle Business Credit, and I'm delighted to have with me today Dave Olsen from Northstar Payroll. If you're a business owner, you have to pay payroll and you have to pay your taxes. That's what we're going to be talking about today on The Money Factor. Hi and welcome to episode 1 of The Money Factor. I'm really pleased today to have Dave Olsen from Northstar Payroll with me. Dave, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How about
Awesome.
you, Ian?
Yes, doing well. I enjoyed our chat the other day, learning about all the services that your company performs, and really appreciate you taking the time to come visit with us.
My pleasure. I love talking to small business owners.
We have a number of questions coming at us, usually on Twitter, LinkedIn. If you have questions, go to @EagleBizCredit, hashtag The Money Factor. On LinkedIn, you can find Eagle Business Credit all over the place, or my profile, Ian Varley.
I've fallen behind with my 941 payroll taxes. Any advice?
That's a great question. We have a lot of companies in that situation who come and look for funding, and it is a problem. You've got to pay your payroll taxes. So we do look at that in detail, but there's a number of different ways that we approach it. It really does depend on what situation you're at. So has the IRS filed a lien already, or are you just falling behind and need some help? With factoring, we're not worried about that as long as we have the full information. But we do prefer, and one of the reasons Dave is here is he can talk about companies that use a payroll service. You don't have the worry of falling behind with your taxes so much. Dave, talk a little bit about the services that you can help people with to stop them falling into that trap.
Sure. Of course, one of our first jobs is to keep people out of trouble with the tax agencies. That is what keeps a lot of people up at night.
Yep.
I know it does for you.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're in that situation? As you said, the first question is assess where you're at. Because if you have some taxes that are past due, the very first thing that you need is a plan for how to not have it happen again.
Yeah, exactly.
If you are in a situation where you need to go to the tax agency like the IRS and try to work out a payment plan with them, very first question they're going to look at is, what are you doing right now?
Right.
They'll work with you if you have it under control now.
Exactly. Yeah, we've seen people that have got into installment plans, and that's great. And we can actually help them manage that as well. We'll remind them we can build a reserve to pay that payment if they, can't get organized enough to do it. Right. The last thing you want to do is, if you've taken all of that time and effort to get an installment plan, is to lose it by defaulting on it.
That's right.
Because they're going to be much less liable to help you if you fall out of that plan.
Right. So one of the things that we're working with small business owners on when we manage the payroll process is that the cash flow involved gets managed payday by payday. So that eliminates that chance of the problem getting worse
That's
or happening again.
Yeah, exactly. And as a lender, we like to see that because, again, we can rely on Dave and his firm to take care of it. So, you won't fall back into that problem. So it's a great question. The answer is yes, we can help you. And if you don't have a payroll service in place right now, we will strongly recommend that you do that because it will stop you getting into that trap again. Now, if you happen to have a lien filed, again, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but we are going to need that lien taken care of. So with factoring, we can generate enough cash usually from your receivables to pay it off. We can also work with a payroll company or a tax advisor to see if there's any kind of offer and compromise that can be done in order for that to be resolved.
Right, because one thing to keep in mind when you have that past due situation is it's expensive.
Yeah.
And so addressing it promptly is going to be in everybody's best interest.
Exactly.
So as you were saying, if the business is in a situation where they've got some credit capacity, you're probably going to be better off to try and structure it, take advantage of that, get the tax agency out of the picture, combined with have the process in place so it doesn't happen again.
Exactly. And, it doesn't hurt having an expert look after your payroll for you. I know when we started this business, I didn't have one day one. And trying to organize that along with run the company was a lot of stress. And I knew that it wasn't my area of expertise and I could easily mess it up. So, it's always a great idea to work with the professionals and have your payroll and your taxes taken care of. But don't look at any issue with 941 arrears or anything like that as being it's the end of the road for you. It really isn't. There's a lot of people out there that can help.
In my business, we only have 5 employees, so I haven't put a payroll service in place. Will that be a problem for me to get funding?
Great question. We were just talking about that. Small companies often overlook this kind of thing and they think they can manage it themselves. But I really would recommend you don't. Leave it to a professional and work with somebody that can help you as you grow, because you're going to grow, you're going to add people. And so if you try and do everything with a large payroll service, chances are they're not going to provide that human touch that you might need. I've got somebody that's starting out of state. What do I do? So I'd recommend you get with an expert to help you with that. And happen to have one right here.
Yeah, part of our job is to try and make the complex simple.
Yeah.
And when it comes to payroll, I'll give you 2 examples of how it can get complex for the small business owner. One is, if you look carefully at all of the information that ends up on a W-2, you'll find there's around potentially 70 different pieces of information that may need to go on there. Now, there is no business, no employee situation that uses every single one of them.
Right.
But part of the challenge is knowing which ones to use.
Yeah.
Coupled with that is the tax deposit obligations. Many small businesses end up in a scenario where they have anywhere between 30 and 70 different payroll tax deposit due dates.
Wow.
During the course of the year that they have to manage. When you take into account the IRS, the state withholding agencies, and the state unemployment agencies, and in some states, of course, local taxes as well.
Right. It's a minefield.
It's a minefield.
Yeah.
And so our job is to boil all of that down into one transaction on payday.
Right.
And for the small business owner, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
When it comes to working with a payroll service.
Takes the stress away, and why wouldn't you want to do that? Do you see companies that start with you, do they often add a lot more people than perhaps you expected? They grow faster just because they now don't have to worry about it?
Sometimes they do, and sometimes it comes back to cash flow management
Yeah.
as well. I've seen businesses that were trying to manage it themselves and constantly getting surprised by a tax deposit that came due that they
Right.
forgot about. It was from something that happened a few weeks ago, and all of a sudden they're in that problem.
Now it's a crisis.
Yeah. So when they get the cash flow under control, then they can focus on growing the business.
Right, exactly. Well, again, my advice, you're never too small to take on, to have a payroll service take on for you. And take it off your shoulders, because you need to focus on your business and growing your business and not worry about all of these complex things that you don't understand unless you're an expert in payroll, which is probably unlikely. And we do see a lot of clients that come on board with us. They can be very small. They try and do it and we'll say, okay, but we strongly recommend you look after this, because we don't want you to get into a situation where you're spending all your time trying to fix a problem that's occurred because you overlooked something you didn't know about, or you've missed a tax deadline or payment, and now the IRS needs to be taken care of, and that's money that you'd allocated for something else. So it's just sound business sense, in my opinion, to work with a professional. We do it here at Eagle. We don't do payroll in-house by any means. It's not something that I could handle, and I don't think our clients should try and handle it themselves, no matter what size they are.
Hey Ian, I have a staffing company, but I'm struggling on keeping a grip on my payroll reporting as I have several locations. Can you help?
So we love helping staffing companies, and if you are at the size where you now are in multiple locations, for us that's not an issue, but for you, yes, I can imagine it's getting complicated. You have all of the different state rules and regulations to handle. So again, we'd recommend working with a professional, an expert that can take care of that. The local state regulations do vary. I was reading there's something weird about Wisconsin the other day as well. It's like, wow, I never knew that. So there's always something I'm learning. But yeah, any particular advice for staffing companies? You're a staffing company, Dave.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that a staffing company has to think about is that their payroll costs have a direct connection to their revenue.
Yeah.
That's what they're selling, is the payroll. And so when they set up their payroll process, they want to do some organization of the payroll records on the front end.
Yeah.
So that the information that comes in comes back out the other end of the payroll process in a way that they can associate it with their revenue.
Right.
So you mentioned locations. Now, one way that comes into play, as you said, is if they happen to be in multiple states. But another way it comes into play is simply keeping track of the payroll cost associated with each client project.
Okay.
So let's say somebody happened to be operating in Georgia, where we're sitting today, and they have a project in Atlanta, they have a project in Augusta, Georgia, and they have a project in Macon. Well, those are maybe associated with different clients, and they will need to have their payroll reports set up so that they know their cost by project.
So you can set them up any which way. You can say this particular
Absolutely.
cost project is this group here.
Right.
That's awesome. So they can really get granular in the information that they have for their reporting services, right? Okay.
Yep.
Well, again, that's something that's going to be very difficult to achieve on your own. I've seen people try to do this on an Excel spreadsheet, and again, it's not going to work well. Use an expert. That would be my best advice to you. So staffing companies, multiple locations, not a problem. Funding for us from Eagle, we love staffing companies. It's a great sector for us. And again, we do look for them to be properly organized so that they can cope with all these different things and be able to do the reporting not only that they would need internally, but also for us to make sure that our funding is making a difference for them. So great questions. Appreciate everybody reaching out to us. And Dave, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Anybody got any questions, please either go to our Twitter account at EagleBizCredit or LinkedIn or our main website, and we'd love to help you.